financial literacy, and the human condition. Welcome to Financial Fitness with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rayam.
Hi, it's Francis. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for watching this video. If you're catching us on YouTube, please help us help others by clicking like, subscribe, and all notifications so you don't miss any videos. And check back for the next video. I think you're going to love it. Thanks again. For more information, you can visit us at hugyourmoney.com.
Welcome to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess Tyler, along with the Money Doctor, Dr. Francis Rayam. Hi.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
I am good, and I always am happy when we have a guest joining us.
Absolutely right. This handsome gentleman to my left here, if you're seeing this on YouTube, is Dr. Bob Weil, the sports doctor. Dr. Bob, will you tell us?
Oh my God, the pressure
about
the
you.
The pressure of youth sports. Hey, you're right. I was going to say the sports doctor's meeting the money doctor. We're meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
And again, I've been doing live radio. I'm a sports podiatrist, so I pay big attention to the role of the foot in sports. Whether you're a 75-year-old grandma, or you're the best athlete in the world, or you're the parents of serious athletes. And Dr. Francis and I paid attention to the challenges of youth sports parents with club teams and traveling teams, and how expensive it is, and that it is a big topic in youth sports. But I was mentioning to Francis this morning, one of my favorite sports writers, the famous Rick Tellender from Sports Illustrated. He was part of the sports writers in Chicago. He's written 10 books, and he's the lead sports reporter on the Chicago Sun-Times. He's been on my show for 20 years, give or take a few weeks. And his article today was Money in Sports. And he was talking about initially the Live Golf Tour and the hundreds of millions of dollars that were paid to players. But he was also talking about, a month ago and 6 weeks ago, the paying of athletes in college sports, and how this whole world is turned upside down with the effect of money. And whether it's college sports, and whether athletes could be paid or they cannot be paid. So
really quick too, there was just a ruling that now college athletes can be paid for their name and likeness, correct?
Well, yes. The likeness, this is a very big deal. Student athlete was a term invented by attorneys over the years, so that schools necessarily wouldn't be responsible. Let's say your son or daughter had a concussion or a serious knee injury in college, and they were covered for the expenses of the surgery, et cetera. Once they're out of school, they're not covered anymore.
I love that
they use the term student athlete meant that you were not an employee of the school, you were an athlete. And the NCAA, which of course is one of the most famous, one of the most powerful organizations for all our lives, fabulous organization, but really caught in the middle, because they didn't want to ever have an athlete who could sign his hat, maybe give his jersey away, take part in a promotion. The school's making $200 million a year, and the athlete gets suspended if he or she gets $10 at a pizza store.
Yeah.
So this has turned the world upside down. At the same time, with you two gals, how the world of women's sports, like women's basketball, has exploded.
So Clark.
Yes. And this kid Reese in Chicago, who just set a record for the doubles. So I'll ask you guys, what would you like to talk about?
Oh my gosh, we're talking about it already. I, for one, would like to know your opinion about how paying college athletes for their name, image, and likeness is affecting them now, and how you think this will shake out, because it's like the Wild West out there.
It's like social media. Good luck to
Yeah.
us. This is something I'm hoping that smarter minds will work our way through this, so that it's sensible, and that somehow it's equitable, and that it's workable. I think the premise, most people agree with the premise. If you're playing for a major university, come out of high school, you're highly recruited, the local car dealerships and all of these other companies would love to have you involved, and they never could. So now someone like yourself, the money doctor, where maybe the parents or the coaches trying to figure out, how do we navigate through this?
Yes.
And the answer is, we'll see, because it's brand new. and it's got a lot of possibilities for hassles, to say the least. I mean, Deion Sanders, his son, I think made $4 million. His quarterback son with
Yeah.
Colorado, and a lot of you say great, and Deion has said, hey, listen, I'm all about the education, and so I think we have to understand it's an upheaval. As
Yeah.
you know, social media magnifies everything times 1,000.
Oh, it's crazy. We
You know,
can't keep up with
one
it,
of
right?
yes, and the big side of it, on the Sports Doctor, I call it the mental game, where we
Yes.
talk about these kinds of pressures on these kids, on these parents. The more talented your son or daughter is, the
Yes.
more the pressure is. Don't you understand, Dr. Weil? Her ankles are killing her. She needs 4 Advil a day to show
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
And what do we do about those things?
Ugh.
So the pressures that many times are magnified with social media have thrown all of this into semi-chaos. And what's interesting to see, the Olympics are coming up. It's always an exciting time.
Yes.
And you have Simone Biles, maybe the most popular athlete in the world, one of them. And, she made a big deal out of mental health
Yes.
when she had her problem at the last Olympics. So the pressures and the challenges, which a lot of times, again, they fall in your lap, which is how do I afford my 3 different children's sports that they're playing? How do I prepare for this?
Yes. Jess.
Money Doctor. Jess, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I just had a quick question actually for the money doctor, especially with either these college athletes or when you sign a professional contract. You hear all the time about these people signing these huge contracts and going broke. How do you approach that when someone's signing a contract, but it's all dependent on injuries and whether, they're able to fulfill that contract or not? How do
Yeah.
you approach that with budgeting your money when you don't know when it's going to end?
Yeah, that's a great question, but it's the same as any other kind of thing. How do you approach it when somebody's just starting off a career as a doctor, but they don't know if they're going to be in that hospital for a long time, or they're going to have to move, or they might be unemployed. It's always
Or owe
plan A, plan B.
$300,000.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Right, in student loans.
So it's
Right.
always plan A and plan B. You know, I mean, I sound like a broken record, but live below your means. Don't live
Mhm.
within your means. And so, at least until you've made your money and it's sitting somewhere where you can
Money
say,
Doctor
okay,
Wisdom. Yes.
yeah, I
I
don't,
had a famous guest on a year or two ago,
yeah,
and her point was 70% of professional athletes
yeah,
are broke after
Mm.
5 to 10. It was a
after 5
shocking
years.
with the
Yeah,
millions of dollars. Yes, and that was like
yep,
amazing that stat was reality. So that's why Jess's question makes so much sense regarding an athlete signs for millions and millions of dollars
yes.
if they're lucky enough for that to happen, and then what kind of preparedness. I would think you guys are in the middle of all of those discussions.
Well, I think that it's important to remember also that they may be signing for that amount of money, and they may even, be conservative in the way they live, but they're also trusting a lot of people on the outside to manage that money. And how many nightmare stories have we heard about the financial planner took off with the money, the manager absconded with it, there
Or
was
they have a
embezzlement.
friend or they have a friend
Yeah.
that manages
How do
it
you
Yeah,
that
like
doesn't have
Otani,
experience.
the famous Otani of the Dodgers, the famous pitcher, home run hitter,
yeah,
whose agent, his
yep,
good friend, I think
yeah.
stole $16 million from him
Oh,
over the years. His interpreter. Remember that
You
story?
know,
It's just like a month or
yes.
2 ago. Yeah.
I remember as a child watching the commercials come on for a bank with Bobby Orr. I must have been, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old or something like that. And I asked my father, how come Bobby Orr is talking about a bank? And he said, because he's broke. And I cried. I was like a little girl
Oh,
and I just cried. I thought, Boston Bruins, Bobby Orr broke. What the heck has happened here? And that's the first time I remember a story about someone taking off with someone else's money. It wasn't the kind of world I was brought up in, where you trusted people and your word meant something and a handshake was important. And I think as we get more and more money into the sports, there's more and more graft and corruption, and it's just the way it goes. But I would like to ask you, Dr. Bob, what you tell parents who are thinking or listening to a child who's, really talented, everybody's pushing them, saying, you're going to get a full boat at this college. What do you tell them? How do you tell them to prepare for that? How many of these kids really get that full boat? And what does it mean when they get out? Do they really go pro or not? What do you think?
Well, many times, the challenge, one of my poster boys, the 2010 men's Olympic figure skating gold medalist, one of my real specialties is the world of figure skating. Evan Lysacek won the gold medal in 2010. He grew up here in Naperville, Illinois. He was 10 years old when I put orthotics in his skates. I'm still putting orthotics in 10-year-old skates. After the Olympics, I had his mom, Tanya, great lady, on the radio. And I said to her something that was bantied about exactly what you're asking also, which is whose goal was it, Tanya, to develop an Olympic athlete? And she said, Dr. Bob, we had ice time at 6:30 in the morning, and I never had to wake the kid up. He always was in the car with his gloves on because it was his goal. It was his dream. So, and a famous late great sports psychologist shared the radio with me in the 90s, Jim Vickery, had recommendations for the sports parents you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And he said, number one, don't be a critic. Be a listener. Talk to your son or daughter. Are you hurting? Yes. How's your relationship with your teammates? So I think sports parents need to be educated. And again, the financial side is one of them. If your son or daughter is on a club team, volleyball, soccer, tennis, ice time, you mentioned hockey, ice time is always very, very expensive.
Yes.
So I think if you have a talented child, then you want to be able to become aware of, again, how do I keep my son or daughter injury-free? Is she losing, is she flat-footed? Does she have high arches? Does she knock-kneed? Does she have a history of trouble? How is she feeling? And so we want parents to be educated. There's been tremendous attention, knock on wood, to the role of the young athlete themselves having a voice.
Yes.
One of my very good friends, famous therapist in the world of gymnastics, is heading to Paris for the Olympics to treat some of these kids. And she fought for years about having a voice as a young athlete. Yes. Think of what happened in gymnastics with the doctor and that whole nightmare, the abuse and all of these things.
Oh, yeah.
So we tell parents, be educated.
Yes.
Understand that you want to realize the reason I co-authored the book, #Hey Sports Parents. The new book's going to be including sports grandparents. There's an epidemic, Francis, in youth sports overuse injuries, both physical and mental, because of these pressures. So we want parents to be educated, and we want them to include being good listeners instead of suck it up, and injuries always happen. And again, if you've had a son or daughter were you a swimmer, Francis? I'm trying to remember. Were you an athlete?
I am a swimmer, but
you are a swimmer. Okay.
I'm going to stop you on swimmer because I have a story about a local Olympic swimmer, amputee, and I wonder if you know him, but I'd like to talk to you about him when we come back. It's perfect timing about Olympics and swimming.
Yes. And I have some football questions too, so that's all coming up. First, I want to get your phone number, Francis.
Sure, it's 413-773-3333.
And you can go to hugyourmoney.com. We'll be right back with much more with our special guest. I love having two doctors on the show. It's a two-doctor show today. It's all coming up with Financial Fitness on WHMP.
Confused about student loans and those parent loans? What are the options? Your Hug financial coach can help sort it out. Hug Your Money. So unique, it's patented.
Welcome back to Financial Fitness. I'm Jess Tyler, along with Francis Ram, the money doctor, who has brought along another doctor for the show today, a special treat.
Two doctors, no waiting. Dr. Bob Weil, the sports doctor.
Yes, two great titles, the money doctor and financial fitness. I think I like that financial fitness also.
You like the fitness part of financial
Absolutely,
fitness.
right.
Yeah, well, I like the sports doctor too. So just before the break, we were talking about swimming and Olympics. And you asked me if I was a swimmer. I am a swimmer, but not an Olympic swimmer. There is a local person named Mike Welsh, who's an Olympic swimmer. who's done all kinds of amazing things. He was the first physically handicapped athlete to complete the 28.5 mile Manhattan Island Marathon. And he also does like triathlons, Ironman things, Boston Marathon, I think 11 times. I think he was at mile 18 when the bombing happened in the Boston Marathon. So this guy's been doing a lot of stuff. But here's the kicker. He's 63. He's been doing this for 25 years. He swims open water Olympically, and he's an amputee. Now, he's a very inspirational guy. I'll call him and see if we can get him to come on and talk to us about this, because he's really inspirational. But he didn't lose he's a Marine, but he didn't lose his leg in duty. He lost his leg to driving drunk on a motorcycle just outside of Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. And so now he speaks to people about the dangers of that. So he goes a lot to schools. We're talking about youth sports, and does that sort of thing. I'd love to hear your slant, just because we're talking about an injury and somebody who really continued to do
he's a real
sports at a high
champion.
level.
Yes, this is somebody who is an exceptional champion in so many ways, whether you want to use the word perseverance, whether you want to use the word motivation. But the point many times when we're talking about, what does it take to get to the Olympic level in any particular sport? And we want to try to talk about the two things everybody cares about in sports, period, which is how can I prevent problems and injuries? And then for those indicated, how can I enhance performance? You want to be 2 steps quicker, strengthen your feet and ankles, work balance, whatever your sport happens to be. But many times overuse becomes a real concern.
Yep.
The doctor, the team doctor, orthopedist of the Yankees, been a guest of mine a few times, Dr. Chris Ahmad. He was writing about the 50th anniversary of the famous Tommy John surgery, the elbow surgery that everybody knows. Do you know that about 1/3 of those surgeries today are on teenagers, on adolescents?
Oh, that's
too
brutal.
too much. Yes, it is. But it's an example, again, of too much. And one of the reasons, again, swimming is an example of what I call prodigy sports. I have a chapter in my book called Prodigy Sports. Think gymnastics, figure skating, again, swimming, could be soccer, where that 10, 11, 12-year-old is so good that this is all they want to do. They want to specialize in one sport. Now, every doctor and therapist knows we want these kids to play all different sports, use different parts of the body, experience different things. And that's great, unless you're a gymnast or a figure skater. Evan Lysacek was doing triple jumps as a 10-year-old. He didn't want to play soccer or do something else. So one of the examples, again, for sports parents, getting back to your question, is you really want to be paying, if your son or daughter is a serious athlete, you want to get physical therapist feedback. You want podiatry feedback. What's the best shoe for that young athlete? So again, when you're talking swimming and you're talking about a sport where there's shoulder problems from swimming 10,000 miles a week, because the thought more is better is still today a big, big problem.
Yeah. Well, we're in America. I mean, that's the core of American
God bless her. You can't
culture,
go 5 minutes in America without watching a commercial for drugs or diets on television.
I want more, and I want it now, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, we talk about your book quite a bit. Tell me why you wrote this book. What did you feel needed to be said that caused you to take the time and effort, which it takes a lot of, to write a book?
My co-author, Sharky Zartman, is a Hall of Fame volleyball, beach volleyball, or team national player, coach, and was very, very involved in the world of, like we said, what does it take to become a world-class athlete? What does it take to coach one? And what about my side of things, which was whatever the sport was, there was an epidemic, again in capital letters, of overuse injuries. Going to 3 hockey games a weekend, or your son or daughter playing 6 days a week. Like we talked about, maybe you're living in the South and the baseball player is just overdoing it, too much throwing, too much pitching.
The 2-a-day practices for a lot of them.
Exactly. And the more is better philosophy, whether it's an overzealous parent, close your eyes and think of the ranting, raving parent on the sideline. We've all seen this.
Or
We've all seen
coaches. I
this.
mean, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Or I call them Svengali coaches.
Oh, yes,
These
Bengalis, yeah.
overzealous coaches, and or sometimes doctors.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
the
people,
pain pill epidemic. So the reason I wrote the book
yes.
was this is what the part of the book was. Number one, Sharkey wrote Sports Parenting 101. All these topics, what is it about?
Mhm.
Choosing these things as a parent. The second part of the book was called The Sports Doctor's In. I talked about everything from what's the best shoe to foot injuries to concussions to these kinds of questions. The third part was I said, ask the experts. I got about 8 different experts, nutrition, sports psychology, coaching, parenting, to add their 2 cents.
Yes.
The last section was sports parents. I got some feedback from what's your 2 cents if you had a son or daughter who, was a scholarship player and those kinds of pressures. And the situation is today is no different. And when you throw the money in with the what it might be worth if your son or daughter becomes a college Division I player, then we would throw in even more pressure regarding against these kids. And somehow we have to remember that youth sports is also supposed to be fun, mom and dad.
Right.
Yeah.
Quick question I want to
That's how-
slip in when you were talking about concussions. As someone who has a little 5-year-old who looks like he's about 8 or 9, he's a big kid. Thoughts on youth football? I do worry about concussions and then the damage to the brain later on.
There is, everybody write this down. There is no safe tackle football, period.
Right.
The good news is flag football is even going to be an Olympic sport. So girls, we used to go nuts with the concussions. I've had people on from all over the world in identifying concussions, dealing, 20 years ago, if you had a concussion, you came to the sidelines, they say, how many fingers?
Yes.
Okay, you're okay. Today, there's a whole protocol. It's a tremendous challenge. There's a gal, Catherine Snedeker, who founded Pink Concussions. There is a difference on the female side. So as a mom, again, or dad, if you can, unless your son loves, and this is his dream and football, I would duck it.
Okay.
There's just no way around the concussion possibility.
Other quick question I want to throw in with the recent signing of Bronny James with the Lakers.
Yes.
He had that medical condition.
Yes.
And is it smart that he's going back to play again?
I'll tell you a story about his daddy, LeBron, who's one of the greatest examples of character in sports, even though he's a billionaire. He was at a game. His son's 13, 12 years old, Bronny. And LeBron's in the stands with his mother. And his mother finally says to LeBron, would you sit down already and stop ranting and raving and rooting for your son? And we've all been there. And it's interesting to see, again, LeBron, his son's got tremendous pressure. There's a lot of people who feel, what do you get? You signed as a pro, you average 5 points a game at USC. He had tremendous expertise cardiovascularly that have evaluated him. This was a real shock. It was like that football player on Monday Night Football who had cardiac arrest and they saved him. So these crazy things happen. And we have to go along with the medical opinion and the cardiology. LeBron got the best of the best. They say he's cleared to play. So I'm going along with that and wishing him the best. And they might be the first father and son.
They are, yeah.
In the history of the NBA. I wonder if LeBron had some influence in the Lakers picking Bronny. But I'm a big fan of the whole thing. I think it's going to be a great story.
Well, I'm sure for the Lakers too, marketing wise, where we're talking about the money.
Yes.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if it wasn't an overt,
Nepo baby.
Even if it wasn't really, overtly, hey, pick my kid, maybe their nepotism was at hand there a little bit. It had to be on people's minds, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, think about the brand deals they're going to get, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be dramatic. It's going to be tremendous. And again, LeBron, we've never seen anything like it. A 40-year-old, his physical athlete like this.
Well,
who's
Tom
still at the
Brady.
top of the game.
I was
Yes.
just
Tom
going to say
Brady.
Brady.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting because how much of that do you think is medical care that has kept them going, or are they like genetically just in
All of
great
it.
shape and state?
All of it. We have
Right?
come a long way. The science of high performance and sports medicine has become dramatically enhanced. Now you have nutritionists. You have, again, 25 years ago, when an athlete would say, I have a psychologist, they'd say, what do you think? What's wrong with you? My
I think
famous sports psychology friend didn't use the word. 20 years ago, he was a performance enhancement consultant, and he worked with Olympians and he worked with Northwestern and the White Sox. The word psychology scared athletes. Now it's accepted. So you have teams of experts. Again, nutrition, mental training, rest and relaxation is the new big science.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way, but still injuries happen. And again, overuse. We're not talking about you fell, you hurt yourself, you got injured.
Yeah, no,
We're
it's
talking about,
repetitive.
I don't remember something. My ankle started really hurting me. And that's when we talk about biomechanics.
Yep.
Are you flat-footed? Are you loose? Do you have leg length equality, et cetera, et cetera? So the podiatrist, the physical therapist is an important, especially again, if you are a parent or an athlete yourself, even if you're a recreational walker or runner, if you have a history of problems, then you want to pay attention. Don't look to push through it. You could end up with something much more of a hassle. So be educated as an athlete yourself, as a parent. I'm hoping you're strengthening your shoulders.
Yeah.
If you're swimming still.
It's funny. I will come clean and say that Dr. Bob helped me a bit as well. Overuse. I'm not an Olympic athlete, but
I was going to
use
ask
my
you if
body.
you found those orthotics in your closet.
I did.
Did you find good?
I absolutely did. And so I have a hamstring injury right now, and of course my rotator cuff shoulder, but I am doing the things that we talked about. And my goodness, it's hard for me to back down. And I think for an athlete, it's almost impossible to just say, I have to rest. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to push through it.
Yes, but
because that's what you're made of.
if you include that rest and recovery is enhancing.
Yes.
Again, my figure skaters 25 years ago, they would do visualization.
Yes.
The rest of sports thought they were nuts.
That's right.
Now it's become, again, a very, very big deal.
Yes.
One of the Chicago hitmen, the great Eric Soderholm, played for the White Sox. He was the first pro ball player I put orthotics in his shoes. He had a hypnotist with him.
Well, thank you. I want to say that I'm going to use a little hypnosis right now. Buy Dr. Bob's book. Buy Dr. Bob's book. Jess, any final thoughts for you?
I mean, it's just really interesting. And I think that everybody has a kid that's involved on some level in sports. It gets expensive. I would just say to make sure that they know sports is not the only thing. Sometimes it gets like that becomes who you are and not what you do.
We just have about a minute left, and I'm just going to ask you if you have any parting thoughts for us. I'd love to have you back again if you'd like to come and continue this conversation. But parting words of wisdom for parents with youth in sports.
Be a good listener. Be a good listener. My son played serious sports. The time goes by. When it's over, it's over. Cherish these times you have, and don't make it more difficult by being a critic. Don't be analyzing your son or daughter's performance on the ride home. Enjoy their perspective and understand that social media has tripled the pressure on these kids, and pay attention to all those factors. But become a good listener. Include that in your quote unquote sports therapy. That's my jewel for the week, Francis.
That's great advice. Great advice. And watch your money. Yeah.
Hey,
Justin,
right.
Can you show your book again for us, Dr. Bob?
Hashtag Hey Sports Parents on Amazon. Again, it's more important today than ever because, again, the pressure is just immense. And lighten up, mom and dad. Yes, if people go to bbsradio.com/the sports doctor, they could find out all sorts of information. They could listen to a show. They can catch Francis for a month or two ago if they go to archives.
All right, Francis, can we get your phone number?
Sure. It's 413-773-3333.
And you can go to hugyourmoney.com. Thank you both, the two doctors today on Financial Fitness. We'll be back next Saturday with another edition right here on WHMP.